Having an educated professional opinion on what's going on in the market and your ability to communicate that is key to success in 2023. Today I'm joined and actually going to get to sit in on a Zoom call that David Childers, President for Keeping Current Matters, in my opinion, the voice of real estate. This is a sales meeting he did with our agents, sharing with us what's going on right now and how they can use this information to drive business.
I do believe there's opportunity in this market, but I think right now, maybe more than ever, maybe not more than COVID, but more than ever, we have to become students of the market. So I want to break down a couple of things for you, give you some perspective. I'm going to give you all these slides, Jimmy. I'll give them to you right after we're done. You can get them out to everybody. I would use them on a listing appointment. I would use them wherever you are. I think you have somebody coming in next week that's local. It's going to give you some local data. Take national, understand local. You are the expert, and this is a market we can absolutely navigate. We can absolutely do that. So I'm going to share my screen. I brought a few slides. Like I said, I'm going to give these to you. I want you to use these however you can. Whenever I'm talking about the market, I have to start right here. And the reality that the 30-year fixed rate mortgage doubled last year. Why is this so important? There has never been a year in the history of interest rates being tracked where that has happened. It's never happened before. And it absolutely slammed the brakes on the housing market in this country. You know, if you could see my board right here, I have a printout of the quote of the Federal Reserve's statement where he said, if you're a home buyer, a young person looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset. And they have absolutely reset the market. That is the truth. And if we're honest with ourselves, it needed to be reset. It absolutely needed to be reset. And you know, if you think about this, there's never been as rapid a rise in interest rates as what we saw last year. Never happened before, never doubled, never risen that quickly in the 50 years they've tracked interest rates. So if you want to understand what's happening with interest rates, you have to look at the 10-year Treasury. That is what you need to be focused on. It's not what the Federal Reserve's doing. It's not anything else. It does have to do with inflation. But for the past 50 years, the 30-year mortgage rate has moved in unison with the 10-year Treasury. They have this symbiotic relationship. And our team, we have a phenomenal research team here at KCM. They have graphed the last 50 years of the 10-year Treasury and the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And you can see it right here. They move together. So you want to know what's going to happen in mortgage rates, look at the 10-year Treasury. And you see the orange letters there. The average spread between the two has been about 1.7%. So literally, you take the 10-year Treasury, you add 1.7% to it for the last 50 years, and you'll get the 30-year fixed mortgage rate. Okay? That's how you understand that. Now, I'm not supposing you're going to take a buyer or seller through all of this. I'm giving this to you so that you have the confidence to understand and say, hey, I know what I'm talking about, and I follow this, I understand this. Now, if you want to kind of ask yourself, why are mortgage rates not lower right now? You need to look no farther than the 10-year Treasury and the spread. And I'll kind of break it down for you. If you look at the last 20 years, the average in blue there of the 10-year Treasury, 3.49%, average spread, remember I said 1.79%, gives you the average rate of 5.28. Well, where are we at right now? Well, we wrapped up last week with Freddie Mac giving us the weekly average interest rate of 6.15. Where's the 10-year Treasury at? It's at 3.48, but the spread has grown to 2.67. See it there in the orange? Now I'm going to make a case for you that the spread between the 10-year and the 30-year is a measure of panic. Okay, so last year we saw a lot of panic in real estate. We saw a lot of panic in the world. But if that panic were not there and we were in a normalized environment, we would see an interest rate right now in the low fives. And I believe that is a target rate somewhere in the mid fives, probably, that we're heading back to somewhere in the neighborhood of the middle of this year. Now, I'm not in the game of trying to predict interest rates. It's a fool's game, truthfully. I grew up in this business, and I had a guy tell me one time, trying to nail down the lowest interest rate or try to get the lowest interest rates, trying to step on a cockroach in your kitchen at midnight without the lights on. It ain't going to happen. It is not going to happen. But you can be a student of this market and understand it. So if we take this idea that spread represents panic, one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty is that the panic is starting to subside. This is our team has looked at this over the last year, and this is a graph of the spread for the last 12 plus months, going back to January of last year. And what you know is we started out the year, and kind of panic started to creep into the market in a lot of different ways, and that spread started to increase. And what happened around August? The Fed came out and said, we're not sure inflation's under control. We said it was going to be transitory. We said it's not going to hang around a while, and panic jumped up. And then what did we see in November and December? Basically, some reports come out and say, okay, maybe it's not going to be as bad as we thought. We're getting a little bit of good information, and panic started to subside. But there's still about 1% difference between where that spread normally lies and where we are today. Now, here's what I'm here to tell you: as we go throughout the year, expect that to come down. We are in a downward trending interest rate environment. Why is this so important? Now, I'm going to come back to just a minute to interest rates, because if you sit down with a client today and you say, hey, guess what? Good news. Interest rates are coming down. What are they going to say? They're going to say, that sounds awesome. We'll wait. We'll wait. We'll wait till they come down. And here would be my question back to them. What do you think everybody else is going to do? What do you think everybody else is going to do? I can tell you what they're going to do. They're going to hop back into the market when that happens. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a frenzied market like we saw in COVID, but they will hop back in. And here's why this point is so important right now. There is becoming a chasm greater than what I've seen and been in the business between what I'm going to say is the confident agent on one hand and the confused agent on the other hand. The confused agent says, I don't really know what's happening, and we're just going to have to wait and see. The confident agent says, I understand what's going on, and I can guide my clients through that. I think as we sit here, about to wrap up January, first month of the year here of 2023, this is going to be a year that the confident agent wins in the market. And I don't believe confidence necessarily comes from, I've been in the business 30 years. But we live in a time where there's more access to information than ever before. If you're new in the business, you can become a student of the market and be that confident agent. And here would be my point relative to opportunity and being the confident agent. I found a quote, and I thought it was so good, from Dave Stevens the other day. Now, if you don't know Dave Stevens, he was a former HUD official and government housing official under the Obama administration. And he said this, he said, be advised, this may be the one and only window for the next few years to get into a buyer's market. And remember, as Federal Reserve data shows, home prices only go up and always recover from recessions, no matter how mild or severe. Long-term homeowners should view this market right now as a unique buying opportunity. As we continue down this road of this downward trending interest rate environment, more buyers will step in. We've seen existing home sales fall, and certainly we're in a declining transaction market right now. We'll sell less homes than we have in quite a number of years, and I'll go through that in just a minute. But there is opportunity. There is tremendous opportunity. I'm not saying it's not hard, but there is opportunity in this market for the agent that understands the market and is able to effectively and confidently communicate that to those they serve. Now, in just a minute, I'm going to get into the housing market forecast for this year. But all that makes sense, Jimmy. I want to pause for a second. I think the agent the team, the individual that understands the dynamic of interest rates, which have dominated the market this past year, are going to win as we go forward.
Yeah, David, this is such good stuff. I just wanted to mention something. You and I had this conversation last week, and as we talked about, especially for those of you that are working, obviously, this is not a short-term fix flip market, so to speak. This is a market where we're looking for people that are focused on the long term. One of the things I would give you as a conversation piece to the agents, for those of you that are talking to folks, is this, that it is more important to be, it's not as important about timing the market as it is time in the market. In other words, by being in the market, as we're talking about, and David's going to show these things, there's none of us that are going to be able to tell you that's the bottom, or hey, wait, you're going to get 5% lower price, or wait, interest rates are going to come down. As David said, that is something that no one can do. And if someone does tell you that, they'll lie to you about other things. But what you can do is you can give them the advice so that they can make the best decisions possible for themselves. And David, I know you're going to go into more of that. And that's why I've valued and been a member of KCM for so long, is I just value the way that we can present this in a way, and the way that it is given to us. So if you can show some of those slides, I would encourage y'all, think of it this way. And I know we've got some folks on here that are already doing this, but taking these slides, utilizing the information that David's providing, putting your local understanding on this, and sharing this with your client base is going to be something that's extremely powerful going forward. So David, good stuff.
And I'll hop into a couple of ideas at the end here where I think there are specific areas to have conversations related to what we see in the market. So if you're gonna take that idea that Jimmy said, have these slides ready, print them out in color, have them on an iPad, whatever, have them on your phone, right? I don't ever want to convince somebody to do something they don't want to do. What I want to do is I want to be able to share with them what's happening. Could I share this information with you? So I want to do that. So what would I be saying right now? First one from March, June, the upcoming month should see a return of buyers as mortgage rates appear to have already peaked and have been coming down since mid-November. What did we just look at? We see that in the technical signs that it appears mortgage rates have peaked. Okay, so let's hope they're right. I believe they are. I believe we're in a downtrending environment. I told you, I think somewhere around the middle of this year, we'll see a target interest rate in the 5s. Now, I think psychologically, when we get into the 5s, a lot of people are going to go, okay, we might be more interested in doing something. My game right now is to be ready when that time appears. That's what we're working for right now. I don't want to at that time kind of go, okay, I'm back in the game. I want to be ready right now to be there. Second thing that's affecting the market in a dramatic way is certainly affordability. As prices have risen over the last couple of years, interest rates have risen. This is a look at historical affordability. So this comes from the Housing Affordability Index. It comes out from NAR just about every month, and this goes all the way back to 1990. We're at a lower rate of affordability than we've been in just about ever. The way you read this graph is the higher the number, the more affordable homes are in this country. And so you look at the last couple of years, you certainly look at the blue there during the crisis, during the housing crisis in 2008, and homes were very affordable. And right now we're coming through this season where affordability is challenged. And I think there are some things that we can do about that. And I'm going to get into those in just a minute. A topic that many of us are wondering about, that I don't know how many people that we work with or talk to that are buying and selling or looking at buying a property down where y'all are at are concerned with, but one we certainly are concerned with is how is this market going to be this year relative to the number of transactions? If you look at the forecast from Fannie, Freddie, MBA, and NAR in total home sales transactions, you see this number right at about 5 million transactions in this country, anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5, the spread of what forecasters are saying. Now, let me give you perspective on that number. This is a look, total home sales going all the way back to 99 in this country. And then I'll show you the forecast for this past year that's not been finalized, and what the forecast is for this year, the two bars there in green. So if we look at this year, 2023 forecast, and you take the NAR numbers, about 5.4 million homes sold in this country. That's total home sales, including new home sales and existing home sales. That's a number that we haven't seen in about 10 years. So if you hear somebody say this is going to be one of the worst markets for real estate sales in the last 10 years, they'd be correct in saying that. Now, I wouldn't run around saying that if I were you, but I'll let you make that decision. But my point is, there's a difference right now between looking at these numbers and looking at them optimistically versus blind positivity. Blind positivity means I stick my head in the sand and I'm like, well, it doesn't matter, I'm going to crush it. Optimistically means I understand what's out here and I'm building my plan to succeed through it. And that's what I see winning agents doing right now, building their plan to say, okay, we're in a market that's going to have fewer transactions. We're in a market where affordability is compromised. What is my plan? What am I talking about? One of the biggest questions that people oftentimes wonder about, and I think it is probably the biggest question in real estate right now, is what's going to happen with prices in this country? I mentioned as we started out that I don't see anybody reputable saying there's going to be a housing crash or crisis, but certainly some saying there's going to be depreciation. I'm not saying they aren't saying that, but not this widespread crash. But if you look at forecasters, here's the one thing I will tell you becomes absolutely clear. And this is a look at all the forecasters we follow at Keeping Current Matters. Here's the one truth out of this. None of them agree. It's very hard to find someone who agrees on what's going to happen to home prices in this country. Certainly nationally, I think it's going to the market certainly will be dictated at the local level. What happens where you're at in the Panhandle, the Emerald Coast, there is going to be different than what happens up in another part of the country, or what happens out on the West Coast or in the Midwest or wherever it is. There are different dynamics at play in every market. But no doubt people don't agree. What we believe, if you look at the average of these forecasters, is nationally we're likely to see slight appreciation or slight depreciation in real estate, but not this cataclysmic sort of 10%, 20% drop in values like some have kind of warned of on YouTube or whatever the case may be. And the interesting thing is, I'll give you a couple of things on that. The good news is most of the people on YouTube that are calling for a housing crash have something to sell you to help you get through it. That's their game ultimately, is they want to cause as much chaos and consternation as they can, and then give you the solution. But I'll tell you the one indicator across this country that shows you that there's not a crash coming is the lack of inventory. If I were sitting down with someone looking to list their home right now, I would do a really, really good job of telling the story of real estate over the last couple of years. And I'll give you a graphic that helps you tell that, because price is always going to be determined by supply and demand. How many people want it? How many of them are on the market? That's what's always going to determine price of any item that you're selling, whether it's a bicycle or it's a house. It's going to be determined by supply and demand. Well, this is a look at total listings in this country from 2017 to the most recent information that we have wrapping up last year. Now, what do we know? If we were to tell this story and I was sitting down with someone, I would say, real estate was sort of normal in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And oh, by the way, COVID showed up in the first part of 2020. And we all remember that and hope it never comes back again. And what happened right there? The meaning of home, the meaning of a second home changed in this country. People certainly said in their house, we're living there, we're eating there, our kids are going to school there, I'm working there. It's amazing that we made it all through it. And you know what? I need a spot for my family. If I'm in a condo, I want a house with a backyard. If I'm in a condensed population area, I want to be somewhere that I have a little bit more room. All the things that we know. And oh, by the way, interest rates dropped to 2.75% in this country. And people said, you know what, we've been thinking about it, and now's the time. We got to do it. And what happened? Nationally, there where y'all are at, Inventory was depleted. Now, what always determines price? Supply and demand. Inventory came down. People said, we're going to do it. They rushed in. Demand, was sort of throttled in that case, and prices shot up. And where they shot up the fastest, they're coming down the fastest. There's no doubt about that. And we're sort of coming out of this hole that was created by the frenzy of COVID. And all the right reasons that it was created. And I think we'll look back on this time more than anything to say that, interest rates and sort of that frenzy are what drove this market. I believe the larger story will be back in 2008, we didn't do enough for the housing market. And in 2020, we did too much. That's probably the likely story that will come out. And we all have been a part of that. We all have in some way benefited from that, I'm going to say. And now we're getting back into a more normal market. And maybe one of the things that in our business, we became too comfortable in the last couple of years of thinking that was a normal market. That was not a normal market. But make no mistake, our customer, your customer, is unapologetically concerned about themselves in this market. Nobody wants to buy something that's going to be worth less than when they bought it. And a lot of people think that. Over time, I certainly don't think that's the case. Well, let's go back to Dave Stevens' quote. The long-term homeowner should view this opportunity as the buying market that they might not have a chance to participate in the next few months or when we sort of flip back into the seller's market. Technically right now, this is a very interesting market. We're less than 6 months inventory nationally, which, in any normal market would be a seller's market, but we're calling it a buyer's market because of the flip that's happened so quickly all across the country. And so that will ease its way out. I have no doubt about that. And if you've been in the business long enough, it's kind of like what happened after COVID. Like, it's a great market until it's not, right? It happens like that. The flip switches and we go, what just happened? Remember that? So let me give you a little coaching on what I believe are the biggest opportunities right now for us. Okay. We'll switch to that. I'll take a couple minutes and give you a couple pieces there. Then Jimmy, maybe we can have a conversation about what some of those opportunities are at. But here's the biggest opportunity. First one, we must control the narrative. Anybody you're working with, when they open up their phone in the morning, they turn on the TV at night, they are going to see a story about real estate that I'm going to argue maybe in some cases is factually true, but tremendously misleading. I'll tell you one of the big headlines that's out there right now. You may have seen them. Foreclosures are up 115% in this country. Anybody seen that? That is a factually true headline that foreclosures are up year over year 115%. Now, what is also not said in that is they're down 37% from 2019, which I would call the last normal year in real estate in this country. So it's all about perspective and helping my clients understand. And when you have that sort of factual, truth-based conversation, I think it resonates with people. I don't think there are too many people in this country right now that go, yeah, I believe I get the full shake when I turn the news on at night. And we have to understand we have the opportunity in today's age to deliver that message. I don't know if we had that opportunity 20 years ago, but we can do it today. We're on a Zoom call right here. I'm in Richmond, Virginia. Y'all are in the Panhandle of Florida. We can do that. I can make videos. I can get my message out to the clients that I sell, because there are people, sometimes it's not even the, CNBCs of the world or the news organizations, whoever they are. Sometimes it's people in our business that say the market's frozen and, the winter sort of freeze has happened in real estate. The bottom line is, even if you take the latest existing home sales report, 11,000 houses sell in this country every single day. Think about that. 11,000 houses sell in this country every single day. If you were to take that even the next step further, 8 houses sell every minute in this country. So I know this doesn't happen there, but if somebody ever bends your ear for 10 minutes talking about how bad the market sucks, tell them 80 houses just sold while you were talking about that. It's just a matter of I'm going to get out there and I'm going to be active in this market. So what are the things that we can do to give customers viable alternatives to navigate this market, because I think that's what this takes. No doubt, we have to think differently about what is happening. Two things I'll give you right now. One, suggesting alternative means of financing. Looking at adjustable rate mortgages and buying down the rate of a mortgage right now, I think are two things we can specifically do to head off the rise in price and the rise in interest rates and the lower what I showed you there in affordability. A couple things. Urban Land Institute said this: the risk of ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, were substantially mitigated by the regulatory reforms put in place after the 2008 bust. Today's ARMs are not the risky products of '08 or even the pre-bubble version. ARMs are no longer something to fear. In fact, they could help borrowers save money and reduce barriers to homeownership. Back during the housing crisis, an adjustable rate mortgage got sort of a bad name, and people were like, we're going to stay away from that. And I had a question the other day. I was talking about this, and somebody said, how are adjustable rate mortgages different today than 2008? My first response was, the biggest difference is you have to qualify. You absolutely have to do that. You didn't have to qualify for one back in the day. It was almost easier not to get a loan than to get a loan back in 2008, but you have to qualify for them. Again, not trying to convince somebody to do something they can't afford or that they don't qualify for, but understand, okay, if you see what's happening in rates, you believe we're in a downward trending environment, and this could be something that could help you, or 3-year, 5-year, whatever the term is on the adjustable rate mortgage, navigate that market. Second thing, a temporary rate buy down. Many of you probably heard that as a 2-1 buy down. They're a hot trend, according to Real Estate News, for mortgages as borrowers face higher costs for home loans. Some buyers are exploring alternatives to traditional mortgages in a period of rising interest rates that is expected to continue to 2023. And buy downs are a less costly alternative to traditional fixed rate mortgages. It is oftentimes, this has been proven based on the numbers. If a seller were to come up with a concession, $10,000, $20,000, whatever that is, it is more beneficial for the buyer to apply that to a rate buy down than it would be to just reduce the price of the home. Now, I would get with the lender, I would understand that. I would say, okay, what does that look like in this particular case? But it can be a very attractive offer on a property that makes it advantageous on the affordability as we navigate this market. Where do I believe the biggest opportunity is? It's clearly in one area, and I'll show you the data for that. And then, Jimmy, maybe I'll pause here and we'll have a little bit of conversation. The biggest opportunity right now in this market, I believe, is in expired listings. I said before, the change in supply and demand works in favor of the educated agent. If you have access to the information, you can see where the opportunities are. Why is that the case? Well, if you look at active listings in this country, how we finished up 2021, how we finished up 2022, active listings have grown. Okay, 450,000 in 2021. Almost 690,000 wrapping up this year. You'd have to pull the numbers in the local area that you're working and say, okay, what were actives the end of 2021? What were the actives the end of 2022? What do we see also about this? Pendings have fallen. Pendings is a measure of demand. So let's go back. Supply and then demand. Supply has risen, demand has fallen. Anytime you see that in a market or certainly in our business, that points to one thing. There are listings on the market that expire, that didn't sell. And we can say for a lot of different reasons, active listings are growing primarily on things that are sitting on the market, not from new listings coming to the market. So what do I want to do? I want to understand that, and I want to be able to have a conversation. Jimmy and I recorded a call early last week. There are 4 things that can happen right there. They can relist with the current agent. They can take the house on the market. And you better believe there have been people over the last 6 months that have just taken the house off the market. You can FSBO it. You can put it for sale by owner, or they could relist with another agent. And I think the agent that understands the market, that is the educated agent, wins that listing. Has an honest conversation about price. Has an honest conversation about demand right now. Has an honest conversation about what's happening in real estate, not trying to sugarcoat it or tell them maybe what they want to hear. Sometimes I think we all have had situations in life where we've heard something we didn't necessarily want to hear, but we were thankful that the person presented it that way. Now, Jimmy, I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to take this slide down. We were talking about this topic together last week, and you brought up the idea of probate, which I thought was a phenomenal idea. That maybe we can talk about that and a couple other things that I'll share that I see as opportunities. And maybe if you leave me some time on the back end, I'll close with sort of an analogy of where I see this market and where I see us heading as we go into the spring.
Yeah, really good stuff, David. I want to just add to that when you're talking about the expired listings, as you and I did kind of off camera last week. The opportunity in 3 to 6 month old expired listings is pretty amazing right now as well. You know, a lot of people 3 months ago said, look, there's too much. It seems like the market's changing. I'm going to take off. I'm going to come back on in the spring. Those expired listings that maybe weathered the storm of having 10 agents call them to ask them if they wanted to relist, or they canceled their listing during that time, and we're waiting to see. Right now is when they are actually considering putting it back on the market. So those are people that you can go in, search in the MLS for those expired listings that the expiration date was, whatever time frame you decide, 3 to 12 months ago. Look and see if they've relisted or sold or are pending. And then those are great conversations, just simply to call and just say, hey, just checking in with you guys. Saw your place was on the market a little while back. Just wondering what your plans are for the house. And then just let them talk. You're going to have some opportunities there. David, we talked just briefly about probate. Do you want to kind of mention that a little more and kind of go into that as well? And we'll kind of
there are a couple things. Jimmy, this was your idea. I'll give you credit for it. I'll kind of build it around it. But we can talk through that. One thing that I want to say, I want to go back. I was on a webinar yesterday that you heard us talking about as we started off. The one thing in that conversation, if I'm calling an expired listing, here's what I want to do. I want to be curious. I just want to be curious. There were more people than ever in this country that took their home off the market prior to December than ever before. Why'd they do it? They're like, hey, everybody's coming over for Christmas and we're just not going to do it. Nothing's selling. I just want to be curious. Are you still interested? Could I share with you what's happening in the market? How do I help you make the best decision possible for what you have going on?
It's really good.
I think if we're curious there, I think that confidently curious shows them, I know what's going on. I want to help you make the best decision, versus sort of having this commission breath type of posture. Now, the thing that Jimmy and I were talking about were a couple things that are happening in the market right now that I just want to give you a little bit of pure purview into, and I think they'll make sense when we talk about them. Two are things that we don't know how they're going to impact real estate. One is a definite trend that I think we can point to and say, okay, this is going to be a big deal. The two things that we don't know how they're going to impact real estate is, one, we do not know the impact of everybody right now in this country that has a 2 3/4 interest rate on their home and what that's going to look like in the future. Now, I don't tell you that to be sort of pessimistic there. I don't know the impact of that. I think a lot of people will hold on to those homes. I think some people, certainly through life scenarios, are going to sell. I don't think nobody's going to sell anymore. That's not what I'm saying, but we don't know the impact of that. The second piece that we don't know the impact of is the tremendous amount of equity that's in homes today. There's more equity in a home than ever before across this country. And a couple things that I would bet on. One is that equity will be put to work. And so I would have conversations with people about the equity in their home. And have you thought about that? Just curious. Are you going to renovate? Are you going to upgrade? Are you going to buy? The move-up buyer in today's market, that's a sweet spot. That's an opportunity, right? You've got this equity. You can move from a very fast-moving market, generally on the lower end, if you want to call it, to something that's not as fast-moving as you go higher. But we don't know the impact of those two. Now, what's the trend that we see that absolutely will have an impact in the market? I believe it'll have a tremendous impact where you're at. And it's an idea and a theory called I'm trying to think what the term was they used. So it's the great wealth transfer. I don't know if anybody has heard of that that's listening, but in the next 10 to 15 years in this country, more wealth will be transferred than ever before. And it's essentially baby boomers that are, it's kind of morbid to say that are passing, and they're, transferring this wealth to their heirs and to those in their lives. That will happen. That is a fact. It is a tremendous more wealth than ever before. What do we know? A lot of that's tied up in real estate. What do we also know? We know that that property has a tremendous amount of equity in it. And Jimmy, you know this better than anybody else, and I want you to speak to it. We know typically how that transaction goes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll tell you a couple of things. If you don't mind, I'm going to rewind because I was writing some notes down because of what you were talking about. Things. One of the things I do want to say, and this is why I love spending time with you, it cues some things that I've been trying to put an idea to. One of the things that I want, if you're out there and you've got these clients and you've built these relationships and you are a true advisor in that relationship, educating some of your owners that maybe are investors, especially, or want to be investors, about the ability to tap into some of that equity through some home equity loans and apply some of that into what they're doing. That is a great way to get the potential to be able to do some of those things. So I just would encourage you, educate yourself on that as well as everyone else. And then another thing I would say is with the probate listings, this is an opportunity right now to really identify a group of people that want and need your help and assistance in a time when they need this. This could be putting together a package that lets them know about and this is public information. When someone is notified or is elected to be the executor of that estate, it is actually public information that you can, now you have to go in our area, it's different everywhere. In Walton County, you have to go to the courthouse or to the clerk's office and request a copy of that file. It gives you the page and everything. But once you know who that person is, just call and say, hey, is there anything I can help with? Having a list of resources like an estate sale person, having someone that is a landscaper, that is cleanup, because a lot of times in our area, those are going to be out-of-town people that need the assistance, and they need a valuation. And when they're a named executor, 95% of the time, unless there's something that the judge sets up because they're concerned about them, and they aren't most of the time, they're going to have the ability to sell that asset and sign a listing agreement the second that they are named executor. We used to have this joke, David, and listen, I know you'll appreciate this growing up in Georgia. I started out selling in a very rural environment. We used to say there were two, and I'm going to shift over to the next opportunity, okay? Because we're talking about expired listings. For sale by owners need our help now more than ever. They could put a sign in the yard a year and a half ago, and they would have 5 offers. And yes, they needed the professional thing, but they could get their house sold. That's not necessarily the case now. And if they do, odds are they're going to, ultimately, they're not going to be in a good position. Another one where we're getting, and so to speak, being where we know there's going to be transactions. We used to joke, and this is something where you can really add value, is that divorces in the far majority of the time are going to lead to a house being sold. The joke we used to have, David, and not to make light of this, was growing up in the rural environment and selling up there, is we used to say, what do tornadoes and redneck divorces have in common? Somebody's losing a double wide. So in this case, finding those folks, not necessarily with the double wides, but finding the folks that are unfortunately going through life events. That's where we want to focus. What are these life events? Job transfers, veterans. You and I talked a lot about, being in those VA areas and focusing around some of those areas that have that. Having the opportunity to now be a true advisor, truly do give professional advice. This is the time really to step forward and be that agent that they need us to be. And so this is one of those where there is so much opportunity here. My mentor says it this way: chaos creates opportunity. And there is an opportunity right now, in my opinion. Literally, if you look, every single business that has grown and been something special throughout history was started in an economic downturn. That's where we are with real estate agents. Our very company was started in the last downturn. This is really that time where agents can step up. So David, I appreciate that. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. I told the story of KCM. KCM was started in 2008. What's been in the news this last week? Boomtown started at the same time. And so I think you can look at those lists, and there will absolutely be careers that will be made during this sort of market. And the other thing I would say about that, you said chaos creates opportunity. I agree with that. Also, in times of uncertainty, people follow the certain. And there are a lot of people right now that are uncertain. And if you are certain, you understand what's happening, you have a plan, people will follow you. Now, I'll wrap up on this. Now, I'll give you sort of analogy that I use a lot of times. And maybe it's where Jimmy and I connect a lot. I grew up in a little town outside of Atlanta, about halfway from Atlanta to Athens, Georgia. A lot of people know about Athens now. University of Georgia certainly had a great football run over the last couple of years, but that's where I grew up. My dad grew up in a town in South Carolina. It was just a few hours away, called Darlington, and probably don't know that town. There's a whole lot of nothing going on there. If you were to think about a Hallmark Christmas movie, that would be this little town. Small town USA, no doubt. But there's a racetrack in that town, and it's pretty famous racetrack. That as we were young, we'd go there, and I started to sort of enjoy and learn about racing. And one thing that I learned is that there is no doubt about it that a driver or a race car driver in their career, in the money they earn, the reputation they build, is absolutely done in the turn. That is one thing you can say about racing. It's not in the straightaway, it's in the turn. That's where they make their mark. Well, let's take that analogy in our business right now. The last couple of years have been a straightaway. It's been relatively easy. I'm not saying the business has been easy and there haven't been headaches, but there wasn't too much talk about pricing. The pricing strategy of the last couple of years was, what the neighbor sell it for? Let's add 50,000 to it and let's see if we can get that. That was pricing strategy. Guess what? We're not there anymore. And if you even go back to the racing analogy, if any of us got into a car, we could go down a straightaway. You could do 100 miles an hour or 120 miles an hour, and you'd be generally okay. But if you came into that turn, you'd be in trouble. You'd sort of freak out, and I don't know what you'd do. If it was me, I'd hit the wall and you'd crash, and that might be the end. Okay. But here's what a driver does. Is they come into the turn, they downshift, they then pick their line, and as they go through that turn, as they get halfway through it, they begin to accelerate so that on the next straightaway, they're up to full speed. And that's the magic of driving a race car. It's the navigation through the turn. And that's how some, end up farther ahead than others, is they can navigate the turn more effectively. That takes a little bit of courage, that takes a little bit of faith, and it takes ability, it takes work. Now don't miss this. Don't miss this. The best leaders in our business understand that right now. They understand that we're in a turn. They're getting their plan together, their team together, and you're like, David, I don't have a team. Jimmy just said, who's your landscaper? Who's your divorce attorney? That's your team. Who's your lender? Like, I'm getting my team together and I'm saying, this is my plan. I'm going to downshift a little bit, and then I'm going to pick my line. I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to do. So as we go through this turn, I'm going to be accelerated when we hit that next straightaway. Remember, I told you, we're heading back to a target interest rate of around 5.5%. We go into a recession, other things happen in this country, maybe lower. You want to be so up to speed when that happens that you're so far ahead of everybody else. Not only can they not catch you, they probably can't see you. And that's how a business is built. No doubt it is through the turn. Now, let me tell you what experts would say about the real estate market in this country. We're about halfway through the turn. Turn started about the middle of this past year. That's when things really started to slow down. And most are forecasting that things will begin to straighten out about the middle of this year. We sit here in January. You're about halfway through that turn. And there's tremendous opportunity. There are folks that are going, I'm going to sit back. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of hibernate. This is the time to lean into it, to look at what is my plan, what's my team doing, what is my line, so to speak, in that race car analogy, so that when we hit that next straightaway, you're in great shape. You're ahead of where you could have been. And I believe that will be the story of this market, no doubt, that this turn will define people's careers and will define the future. You'll be telling stories about this market 2, 3, 5, and 10 years ago, just like people are telling stories about 2008, just like people were telling stories about 2020. And that's what's in front of us. And Jimmy, I know with your leadership, you're going to make it. I'd love to come back and share with y'all. And as we go through this turn, reach out to me. Stay connected to what we do at KCM, because more than anything else, we want to have your back so that you have the information and can speak to all of this eloquently and confidently and guide clients forward.
Thanks for watching the video. I specifically chose the video below for you because it builds on the one you just watched. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.